Just a little bit of trivia. So today happens to be the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And he lived a minimalist life. Of course, it was to protest against the British Empire. But I think there are some philosophies that we can definitely borrow from him and see how we can lead, I would say, a minimalist lifestyle so that we don't, or we can extend what we have today. So my name is Rishi, and I'm the founder of TrustTrace. I also have my co-founder Shamik, who's also sitting in the audience here. We started TrustTrace more from I would say, a personal story that we had, some problems that we faced. So we are originally from India, but we've been living in Stockholm for some time. So I'm from Bangalore, and I've seen what Bangalore has transformed in the last 20 years, right? TECHNIA has their offices as well in Bangalore, a pretty large one there. I've seen lakes catching fire. I've seen foams coming onto the roads while you're driving. Water, so Bangalore has run out of water, drinking water, right? And we have set up our India office actually in this industrial or a textile hub called Tirupur. And we have our development center there and so on. And there, the other co-founder actually has seen a lot of issues with, they were into organic farming, and they couldn't use the groundwater because of the dyes and chemicals that were being released into the water there. So that is when the four co-founders got together, and we said we had a similar moment like yours, but not at the bar, but elsewhere, where we said, we come from the technology background. We've been building systems for all the companies that we saw there on the other side. We've been implementing PLM systems and so on. Is there something that we can do to actually make a difference? And can we use technology to solve the problem? So we started looking at it from a local angle, and then we realized that the textile industry, most of the production or purchasing was happening outside of India, right? Having been here, we know how conscious the society is. So we started talking to a few brands, right? So we'll come to that. But overall, what we have seen is there has been a great push towards having more circular supply chains, more sustainability built into the designs, a lot of reuse, push towards slow fashion, and so on, right? And so these are things, even though the last 2 to 3 years when we started, it wasn't so big. But today we see that everybody comes to us and says, hey, we know that there is this problem and this is what we need to solve. Initially, it used to be like, oh, I think we need to do something about it, right? And this is a momentum that is being built. And as you see there, as Hannes mentioned, about 80 to 85% of the clothes that we buy today are actually going into landfills. Do we really need so many clothes on a yearly basis? Is that something that we can we make a choice, and can we extend the life of our clothes and so on? So today what I'll do is I will talk about the entire cycle of the manufacturing. I'm sure people in the audience know what happens, but I will talk about the story from the fiber to the garment, what happens, and then what is also happening once you purchase a garment, right? And then we will see where we want to look at technology intervention, and also see how we plug into the PLM systems that are already there today. So if you look at a simple garment life cycle, okay, it goes from the fiber, then it goes into a yarn process, then a fabric is made, then a garment is made, and then you finally get to buy it, right? And then afterwards you discard it at some point of time. But I mean, this is just a very simple product that we're looking at, and you can just look at the chain there, the number of touch points that are there. You can probably have the jacket that you're wearing has probably gone through 15 or 20 different countries. So it's extremely complex. So the photo that Hannes showed earlier in terms of the number of systems that are coming together to actually produce a simple T-shirt, it's tremendous. So how do we sort of get an idea as to where do we act, right? So that is where we started. We said, okay, can we identify where the garment comes from? Can we identify the risk zones and share that with the stakeholders, which is predominantly the suppliers and the brands? And can they at least take certain actions to improve that, right? So for example, we started working with brands like Houdini and Filippaco, and this specific jacket from or a hoodie from Houdini was the fabric came from say New Zealand, and then it was processed in Italy, then Portugal, then finished in the Baltics, and this was just the fabric. Then you had the zippers and other parts coming from Japan, and then you had some coming from Taiwan, and so on. So it is a very, very complex supply chain. So for us to just understand this entire supply chain, what is the kind of details that we need to collect at every point, and then share that with the the brand to say, hey, this is where it is, and these are the sort of touch points, and this is where you need to take the call. So what are the issues that we've seen or what we've come across in the production side, right? So obviously, I mentioned about pollution and emissions and things like that. So the fashion and the apparel industry is the second most polluting after the oil and gas industry today, right? So the amount of power that we consume in the industry is tremendous. Can we look at renewable resources or renewable energy and so on for that? Then working conditions. This seems to be a very, very big topic. There was a major disaster about 5-6 years back in Bangladesh where 1,600, 1,700 people were killed in an instant. So this was, and then they had to go through the labels to find out which were the companies that were manufacturing there. So we have seen some of those factories, and they're absolutely deplorable. How do we sort of bring, or how do we improve the lifestyle or ensure that the workers there get the basic minimum that we sort of experience, right? So we're looking at the environmental aspects, we're looking at the social aspects, which are pretty dire in many cases, right? And then there is the use of chemicals and dyes. So this was again a very, very big issue in India. So we've seen that kids, their growth gets stunted because of the chemicals used in the farm and so on. So these were the sort of different areas that we saw, and we said, okay, these are the things that brands could sort of tackle, right? And what happens once this it is bought, right? How many times do you use it? So studies say that every garment is worn maybe for about 4 times or 5 times on an average. That's pretty much it before it gets discarded. So, and then there is a lot of problem with washing. We wash it so many times. There's a lot of microparticles that is getting into the water, microplastics, and there are a lot of other issues with respect to the usage. Typically, a good garment should last at least 7 to 10 years, which is where I think in the design stage itself, if brands are able to take a call that on how they can extend the life of a garment, how can they build good designs and not something that can be reused or not something that can be discarded very easily, right? And that's where I believe even the PLM systems that you guys are building, if there are factors that can be put in to say, hey, okay, this specific design meets this criteria and so on, that will help the brands also improve their designs drastically. Having said that, I think there is positive stuff that is happening. So there is a lot of movement towards renting, reuse, and then recycling as well. So in terms of renting, we've seen companies like Rent the Runway and a few others that are doing extremely well, where you can get into a subscription model. So you don't need to keep buying clothes. You can say, okay, I'm going to use 4 or 5 for these many months and then always return. So we are working with kids wear brands like Pulano Piret and Mini Rodini and so on. And as people who have kids will know, they grow out very, very quickly. So that's a very, very good option for many of the parents around, right? And we've seen local markets where there is renting that is happening, but can we use technology to actually grow it in scale? So this is something that is also happening as a movement in many places. So as Rebecca mentioned there, so if you're not willing to, if as a brand or as a company, if you're not willing to change, you may perish very, very soon. So there is a growing demand for more sustainable products right now in the market. And with whatever we've heard from the market and whatever business cases that we've seen with the customers and brands that we've been working, uh, there is a clear focus to align with the new age buyers. They want to understand the risks in the supply chain, because if there is a problem, I mean, we know how the stock market reacted after this whole Bangladesh incident. The share prices of all the large brands actually fell by 7 to 10%, right? So how do you identify hotspots? How do you sort of move into more sustainable supply chains, right? And eventually, we've seen that with more customer engagement, you can actually drive higher sales. So that is something that we've also noticed with many of the brands that we've been working. So there is definitely a business case in terms of higher margins. You can actually demand for better prices for if your clothes are sustainable. So like Houdini again as an example, everybody knows that their jackets are at the higher level of, in terms of the prices, but they give a lifetime warranty on it, so it can last 10, 12 years, right? And if you don't like it, you can always return it back to them, and they will reuse it. So we as TrustTrace, so what do we do? So we, like I said, so we have an office here working very closely with the brands to understand their pain points, but also in India and other countries. So we've worked with suppliers in over 20 countries today, understanding their pain points and how do they tackle or how do they use technology, to make improvements. So we help brands today to identify their supply chain, which is, and they note the tier 1 suppliers, but identify tier 2, tier 3, and beyond, right? And then if they are making material claims today, saying that, hey, I'm using organic cotton or I'm using recycled material and so on, so then we help those brands to actually verify those claims and then take it to maybe e-commerce platforms or even end consumers or even their own web shops, right? And then the third aspect that we are working on right now, so the first two on sustainable supply chains and conscious products, we have ready solutions. With respect to circular business models, we're looking at how to use that data that we've collected to get into more renting and reusing and things like that. So, I mean, these are some of the brands that we work with. We work predominantly with the Swedish brands, but we've started working with brands in Germany, France, and UK over the last 5-6 months. More importantly, I think we have about 1,600 to 1,700 suppliers across multiple tiers on our platform. And here we've started seeing the synergy where we understand that there's a supplier that maybe 4 or 5 brands are using. So every time every brand audits that supplier, maybe that's data that can be reused, right? So this is the data that we store on our platform and then maybe can be pushed into the PLM systems and other systems, right? So what we understood was every brand does their own audit and things like that. Is there a possibility to sort of share information? If you're using the same kind of suppliers, you're using same kind of materials and so on, is there a possibility to share that information so that you reduce the amount of effort that you as a brand have to put in to go get the data? And there's a lot of data fatigue on the supplier side as well. So is there something that they can reduce? So I would say the outdoor industry has actually been pretty forward-looking that way. And they have said that they would like to start sharing some of this data in the near future, at least basic data on certifications and certain processes, the social audits that they have there, or the environmental audits that have been done. So a lot of the groups or a lot of the brands on the environmental or the outdoor industry are pretty open to it, and do believe that many of the other brands are also moving in the from the high street fashion brands are also moving together to see if they can create a consortium around that. So this is to give you a view of what or how we typically do, and the PLM systems become like very, very important for us, because we collect the bill of materials and the design specifications from the PLM systems into TrustTrace. And once brands launch traceability requests, we try and track every single item on the bill of materials, right? So the things that we typically claim that we collect are in terms of the processes followed, in terms of the locations where they were produced, in terms of the evidences and certificates that they have to support a specific claim. So we go typically we go to the manufacturer, then we ask them where they buy the fabrics, etc. Then again, we talk to the fabric suppliers and ask them as to where they got the yarn and so on, and finally talk to the yarn supplier, and then get where they're getting the raw material. So the idea is that yes, it will be a little bit of or quite a bit of effort in the initial, let's say, 8 to 12 months. But once the suppliers are on board, we've seen a lot of adoption after that. That could be initial resistance, maybe beyond tier 2, tier 3, because they don't have a direct relationship. But once they understand, or they understand the incentives, and they understand that the industry is moving towards a specific direction, so they definitely do come back and say, hey, okay, this makes sense for us, because it also even I need to share a lot of data. So they themselves also can use the platform, right? So the areas that we are looking at right now, obviously, is to see where are the non-conformities and so on. Another area that we are actively building is around climate action. So we should have the module out in the next 2 months, where brands can calculate the carbon footprint for every product, right? And then say where it is that they want to reach. If you can sort of say that this is my baseline in 2019, by 2025 or so you want to achieve a specific target, what is the action that you need to take at what level? It could be your internal operations, it could be your stores, or it could also be along the supply chain, right? We have something around for consumer engagement as well. So today, the consumers can walk into a store, scan a QR code, get the product data. They can know how it was manufactured. They can click on the specific manufacturer, where they get more data on the manufacturing process, what was the philosophy, and what are the sort of working conditions and things like that. So this has become like an engagement tool for many of the brands that we work with. So there is a lot more customer loyalty, and today, at least there is the perception saying that yes, this brand is better than say some other brand, right? What we do, of course, is we are not an audit body. We are a data collection and verification platform, and if a brand is already working with say certain audit bodies or certification bodies, we can integrate that data so that we overlay the traceability data along with the audit data, and then the brands can decide how much of this can be shared with end consumers or other stakeholders and so on, right? So, but what we have realized is that the more transparent a brand is, I think the uptake or the sales growth has, I would say, even if we look at e-commerce platforms like Zalando and so on, if you have a sustainability tag, your products move at maybe 30-35% faster rate than other brands. Quick examples. So this is something that we do with Philippa K, for example. So this sustainability tag that you see here. So we have automated that process, and we have a relationship with Zalando as well. So Zalando has a set of specifications saying for a product to be tagged as sustainable, it obviously has to have a certain number of certifications and has to meet certain criteria. So we have automated that process. So we work with the suppliers, collect the evidences, validate certificates, etc., which also we have automated, and then push it directly to Zalando. And Zalando has actually come back with a statement saying that, hey, only about 20% of the products are actually tagged as sustainable, though we believe that there are at least 50% of the products that are sustainable, right? So there is a huge amount of work that needs to be automated and done. Similarly, with respect to Houdini, I mean, it's one of the most sustainable brands that we have come across. They have a lot of data, all the way till the the raw materials and so on, and they work with some of the best supply chains. It is easy when you're a smaller brand. I do understand if you're a much larger brand, it is very difficult to move the supply chains, as well as the fact that there are shareholders who are demanding their dividends quarter on quarter. So But having said that, there's quite a lot of things that we can do to ensure that we move on to more sustainable supply chains. I mean, this is something that they used for their North America launch, where we showed the entire product journey for a couple of their products, and they have a goal of actually going completely transparent in the next 2021. So we hope to be part of the complete journey with them. But so if you just look at some of these brands, right? So there is a definite push today in the market towards being absolutely sustainable. Oatly, which is, for example, which has been there for the last 15 years, has suddenly skyrocketed in the last 2 to 3 years. And they are putting out numbers on their footprint and so on. They're really challenging the industry. I know there are a few people from Arla here, but we've seen the real uptake. We've been following all these pretty closely, right? Similarly, we work with Cezanne in France. I mentioned Houdini. Allianz has got a separate section for sustainable, or they call it Braval. And Galeries Lafayette in Paris again has got this Go for Good section. So everybody is creating these sustainable sections, and their goal is that in the next 4 to 5 years, they move at least a majority of the products under those categories.